Gamers are coming around to the Metaverse. Today on Metaversity, your first stop for everything on the new frontier of Metaverse and everything blockchain. I'm Chris and Kristen, and we'll explore and learn this new world together. So I think, there's a couple cool things that are happening. Samsung created a new Metaverse world, or at least that's what they're calling it. I think you and I would probably say it's not quite a Metaverse. They are referring to it as Space Tycoon. Now, what's neat about it is I know that our kids are going to love it because basically it's another Roblox world where you can go build and explore Samsung products. Might be a little bit of brainwashing on, come buy our stuff.
Oh, maybe.
The Samsung products. But
maybe. But I feel like we've seen that in other ways in history, and they don't really take off. So, I wouldn't hold my breath on that one.
We'll have to see. It's one of those things where I started kind of checking into it when I saw the first couple articles about it. And I thought, okay, so are we going to see things like NFTs in Roblox or some stuff? Because I feel like Roblox is just set up really well for that type of thing. If they were just to kind of expand into it, and they already have such a huge user base. But you can buy some digital assets there, but they're not NFTs. They're just kind of more like Robux and Roblox kind of stuff. So
right, in-game currencies like you've always seen.
Yeah, and then you can buy some things, and it belongs in Roblox. And
yeah.
But I was excited for a minute. I saw that, and I was kind of like, oh.
And then it turned out not to be the thing you were thinking it was.
No.
Wah, wah.
Well, you see, like, people talk about blockchain and Web3 and the Metaverse. And, if you believe the Metaverse should be a part of blockchain technology, as soon as you kind of see those words all used together, you get kind of excited. Or when you see Metaverse, you're like, oh, okay. You start thinking crypto and NFTs, or at least I do. And then when you see it's just another kind of virtual world, you're kind of like, oh, well, that's what some people think the Metaverse is now today.
Yeah, it's people like just hopping on the bandwagon or whatever. Like they see these buzzwords and they're like, ooh, I need to capitalize on that buzz. So I'm going to put those words, not using them correctly, not actually in line with the vision of what they're supposed to mean. And then, and they get picked up and used and overused. And then all of the sudden now the terms don't mean what they meant before, because they marketing people, they did it and they made the term muddy, and it, becomes useless, and we have to invent new words. And, it's just a horrible thing that marketers do. They're trying to capitalize on something that isn't related to anything that they're doing.
Right. Well, and we've talked in the past, there are companies like MetaZero who have a goal, they're just starting out, but have a goal of trying to make it easier to develop across multiple blockchains and do that type of thing. But, it all gets kind of mixed and buried under, Samsung coming up with a new Roblox game.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate that that's how it kind of goes, but you see it time and time again.
Mm-hmm. But, I think we've talked in the past how people were a little bit nervous, like a lot of people were a little bit nervous of the Metaverse and whether or not people were going to adopt it and that sort of thing. Now, this survey is a little bit slanted, I think, because they only interviewed gamers. And so I think gamers are going to kind of be a little bit more forward thinking when you start talking about the Metaverse and what it is and what it means.
Well, yeah, when you're thinking about like who early adopters are, they're definitely in that group. They're in the group.
The gamers are going to be there.
Yeah, they're almost always the group you're kind of going to.
But, there's a company called YouGov that did the survey, and they did it on behalf of Globant, but YouGov's really the one that did the survey. And they found that 52% of U.S. gamers believe the Metaverse is not just something positive, but it's going to change the gaming industry. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think, especially when we get into augmented reality games, I think it'll be pretty incredible. VR, I think, is going to be amazing, but it's such a limited experience. Where AR, to change your experience, you just change your location.
Yeah. Well, I think when I think about my excitement about AR in relation to gaming, I think back to when we were super active playing with the kids and playing Pokemon Go, and how, being in Central Florida, it's easy to go to Disney and there's like a shit ton of Pokestops and stuff and gyms. And we would go, we spent a lot of time going just to Disney Springs, and we would meet up and there was like hundreds of other players.
Oh yeah.
There.
They would have a community day and you'd go and everybody was playing.
And people like interacted to play the game better together, to get, shinies, or where did you get shinies or whatever, And, if you've never played the game before, maybe it's a hard one for you to relate to, but seeing as we did, my brain immediately goes to, how does augmented reality actually make that experience better? And I think about like, okay, so we were experiencing digital assets in the real world, but the portal to view them and interact with them was on our phone. And imagine instead if it was your glasses and you could actually like hold your hand up, and like I'm holding my hand up here inside this VR world, I get like a little menu or whatever, and I say, okay, I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to put a Pokeball in my hand and I'm going to throw it.
Right.
And then, it would actually, maybe you could make it twist like you do baseball when you're throwing it, and it would go around and it would hit them and, zap them, and you try to catch the little Pokemon guys. But,
well, I just remember,
if you experienced that, maybe you would see, because now they allow for like your little Pokemon guys to like walk with you, and you would see people with their little Pokemon guys all around you. Right. Kind of walking through the world together. And how cool would that be?
You could see them throwing their balls at other Pokemon.
Yeah, you would see them. Yeah.
And maybe part of the competition at that point is now the Pokemon pops up for you and that other person.
Yeah.
You both see it at the same time.
Competitively see it, yes.
And you can kind of in a competitive world. But I also think of, too, we were already meeting new people and talking to people, and that was in a heads down experience. So imagine, the socialization that would come out of
a much more collaborative one. I mean,
collaborative or
fighting a super big baddie at a gym, for example, when there was 20 people allowed in the room together and everybody was sitting there like frantically, tapping on their phones and stuff. Like that's just imagine if instead of everybody standing around huddled underneath a tree, the only tree at this Pokestop in the shade, tapping their phones frantically to like try and beat the baddie there at the gym, if instead they were actually like doing stuff with their hands like together, heads up, and interacting and like, they actually, I could see what they're doing and they're casting this or they're powerful or whatever it is.
Right.
I just think it's like that vision of where we're going. That's the most exciting, some of the most exciting stuff that I see in my head when I think about all of this. And so when you say, gamers are focused on gamers and early adopters, I'm like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, no kidding. That's where it's going to go.
Yeah.
And, standing around and being strategic about where you stand and all that stuff could all be a part of that AR experience. And it's funny, you brought up Pokemon Go. Part of that survey is they asked these people who they related or what companies they thought of when you were talking about the metaverse. And some of them make perfect sense. Actually, I think all of them make perfect sense, but Niantic was one of them.
Of course. Yeah.
Of course, they had Meta, Epic Games. I think a lot of people still think of Fortnite as kind of being a virtual world or metaverse.
I think it depends on what you're calling a metaverse and like what your vision of that future actually includes as to what companies you go to. And that comes down to the marketers again.
Sure.
We need the most relevant voices to be the ones that are driving the use of these words. And look, folks, if you're like, I'm, listening to this podcast or watching it, and you are one of these marketers that is muddying the waters, like, stop it. Shame on you. Slap your hand. because you need to stop. Like, find your own buzzwords in your own terms, like things that are relevant to you. Make them. I mean, shit, Samsung, you're huge. Right. If you're not making a freaking metaverse, like, get the F out. Right. Because like you've got stuff. You've got so much stuff. Join the metaverse if you're actually going to be in it.
Right.
Like if you're really going to do it like for real, like do it for real. Like, express the vision, and it needs to be in line with where we're going. Because if it's not, I understand you got to have baby steps to get there. But if it's not actually headed that way, you shouldn't be using that term right now. Well, you're just making it bad.
And I think there's proof that you can head the right direction, because, one of the other companies that's on that list is the Sandbox. And it's definitely different than Roblox. But on the flip side, you can go in there. There's games you can play. You can buy land. You can buy NFTs.
Yeah.
You can do all the stuff that, feels like it's headed towards the direction of the metaverse. And I think if you're being really, really strict, that's not the metaverse either, but at least it's headed the right direction.
Right.
There's some decentralized pieces to it. There's some interoperability with some of the stuff there. And the stuff that isn't, they're working towards getting there.
Well, and they've been open about kind of their vision for where they're headed. And like I said, I mean, I totally get it. Like, let's work towards that. Let's take the steps. But like, if we know and we understand kind of what the vision is for, the baby steps to get there don't matter as much in terms of, my problem here with the marketing, right? And they don't muddy the waters because people understand that's where we're headed.
Yeah. What's really tough about, now they may get there. What's really tough about Roblox is that still feels like a very, like, it's not even like VR, you're just kind of,
it's just another game.
It's just another game.
Well, that's what
and it's online.
Yeah. I mean, we've spent a lot of time over the last few years talking about this, with my involvement in businesses and stuff that I'm working on. Like, we've spent a lot of time, and I've been pretty passionate in my responses to you, and you've been like, oh yeah, well, Roblox is, or whatever. And I'm like, or you've mentioned before, like you thought Fortnite was, I don't see it. It's not in line with what my understanding is of where we're going and what this ought to be, what we're all kind of working towards. And so I get kind of mad about it, because I'm like, all they're doing is just like, it's the same old. Well, they still have a game that's totally closed off. And just because like Nike's allowed to like put some stuff in there, or they have, Mario and Luigi in there, does not mean that they're interoperable. It doesn't mean that their vision is metaverse. They're still closed off. They're still their own thing. It's just not. It has nothing to do with blockchain. It has nothing to do with any of it. And so,
it should make you feel good.
Mad about it.
You should make you feel good. I've come around with you where I used to say, Fortnite was baby steps, and I just flat out said Sandbox has kind of got the right idea, and Roblox doesn't. So we're all kind of evolving as we move along.
Totally,
and all that stuff.
And I know. I just in the beginning, when people are learning about this stuff, they're reliant on the information that is available out there to read, to watch, to listen to, and we all, as a community, need to be on the same page about where it is we're headed. And, if you're just grabbing buzzwords just so you can get clicks, like that's some bullshit, and y'all need to cut it out.
Well, one of the funny thing is, because you're talking about like people promoting and advertising and stuff. One of the things about this survey that I thought was kind of funny, and it's kind of like almost like a well duh, but for almost half of the people that were surveyed said they weren't super excited about how ads may appear in the metaverse or what they may look like in the metaverse. And I totally get that. I hate when I'm in anything and an ad pops up right in the middle of
exactly. That's probably
what they're doing.
Based solely, that decision, or opinion is based solely around how they've experienced it so far.
But the flip side of it that's pretty funny is almost the same percentage of people were like, but if I have to experience ads to have free play,
well,
then all of a sudden it's like, I'm okay with it.
Well, I can get okay with it. Doesn't mean I like it.
Right.
But the thing is, like, ads, we talked about this, I don't know, a few podcasts ago. Maybe you should link that one at the end of the video, like we've been talking about. So anyway, when you think about how ads currently are and how ads ought to be in the future, like they're very, very different.
Right.
And so, the ads that in order to play a game on my phone right now, a free quote game, in order for me to, actually play that game for free, I have to watch ads. Right. And I'm okay with that, but the ads are not effective.
Right.
And most of them now, which is one of the most irritating things, like auto click and go to the app store and like pull up their thing. And I'm like, you made me leave my fucking game just so that I could get this, 5 minutes of extra play for free. And that I think is more of a turnoff, as a consumer.
Right.
I'm not going to go buy your game now. Like, screw you,
Right.
And that's how ads appear in a lot of these games now. They're banners, they're pop-ups, but they're not engaging. They're not telling me anything really about your brand. In fact, most of the apps or games on your phone, when they have an ad like that, they show an ad that's not even relevant to the game they're actually advertising.
No, but I do think, when we enter kind of that metaverse AR world, though, they could be engaging in the sense that if they pop up and there's something interesting that may draw me in, I may not really care about the product, but if there's like something I can do that's kind of pretty cool, I may actually look at it for a minute.
Well, that's what I think.
And that's really it, right? It's brand recognition.
It is. It's kind of giving you the warm and fuzzies about a brand, and it helps you to be able to recognize it in the future, but it also makes you excited about products that they're currently working on. And, you see that with companies, and it seems weird that it's people like Nike and Adidas and that kind of stuff that are, some of the first advertising mega companies that are trying to find their place in a metaverse type future.
Right.
And, I get that it feels a little weird sometimes when you see what they're doing and they're like, yeah, you can get these shoes for your, for your avatar or whatever. And, Fortnite. And it's like, well, okay, well, that's kind of silly, or I can buy this shoe as an NFT and it represents ownership of some real shoes that I can go pick up at the store.
Right. And that's all.
It's cool.
It's
and they're thinking about like how this future actually works, because in the grand scheme of things, they have a product and they need to get you aware that product exists. They need you to like that product. They need you to see that product as a solution for some need that you have. You want your feet to look pretty, or you want to have shoes that are comfortable, or whatever it is. And they're like, here's how we can show you this in a way that's actually engaging to you in that setting, instead of there just being some stupid like banner pop up that shows up at the bottom of your vision.
Well, even worse, you're forced to watch a 15-second video out of nowhere, or advertisement, 30 seconds. Yeah. And those ads where it's like I'm enjoying my video, or I'm enjoying my game, and now this thing pops up and I have to watch it for 15 seconds or 30 seconds.
It's such a turn off as a consumer.
Yeah, it just makes me mad. I'm like, oh, gosh, I got to wait for this thing. And a lot of times I look away from it. If it's like on my phone and I'm playing the game, I'll like turn my phone down and then just kind of wait and then see if it's back to my game, and then I go back to it.
Done. Or if I've finally waited long enough to get the little X in the top of the screen,
right,
it's like X, close that shit.
Skip video, whatever I need to do, just kind of moving on.
I mean, it's just ridiculous to think that's, but when you're thinking about, YouGov or whatever, and they're doing their thing and they're trying to pull people and being like, hey, are you going to be excited about advertising? It's like, well, if it's going to be like the advertising that we've already experienced, fuck no, I'm not.
Absolutely not.
So, if you think about, hey, it could actually be engaging, and then I don't know. I mean, a small step in that direction, right, is the little advertisements for games in games that allow for you to actually do a little bit of play.
Right.
That's a great step in the right direction, because that's definitely engaging, gives you an opportunity to kind of play it and, whatever.
Especially if it's an ad for a game, because then I might actually go play the game. But those aren't bad.
But if you think about, okay, so what does that look like in a metaverse?
Right.
Maybe the game pops up and you get a chance to do like a little mini game. And if you actually like it, you
go find it.
Maybe maybe you download that. Or maybe it's like a layer of interaction in your real world. And you're like, wow, this is actually, I really like this. I love having all these little Pokemon guys everywhere. And you like flick that layer on, and now all of a sudden you're living with Pokemon.
Well, I mean, I was thinking potentially more practical. You're walking along and a little Starbucks ad pops up, and there's a little Starbucks game, and you play that game, and if you do well or you win or whatever it is, you get a free coffee at the end of it. I mean, those types of things are pretty cool. Like, I may actually engage, and I may actually go to Starbucks, because the way those work is, they're giving away a free coffee, but who who goes to those places and this whole idea of gift cards and those $5 off coupons and everything else. Who goes to like Starbucks or Target or Best Buy or any of those places and just spends $5?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You're always going to go in there and spend more. And
there's lots of opportunity for really amazing, marketing in the future. And I am excited for some of the stuff I can't wrap my head around yet.
Right.
Because that stuff exists. That stuff will happen. Just like in the beginning of having the internet, people couldn't understand the how advertising, how any of that would work. And now all of a sudden it's like every day.
And that's a great point, because a lot of the stuff we're throwing out here is literally still normal marketing we're used to, just kind of adapted for.
It's Web 2.
It's Web 2 adapted for AR versus the stuff we're not thinking about that you could do for AR.
Yeah. It's you really need to stretch your imaginations. And, the people that are doing marketing generally are very creative individuals. So some of the stuff that they're going to come up with is going to be just phenomenal.
Right.
And I'm here for it. But we've really got to kind of stretch the boundaries of our imaginations. We need to understand kind of the technology and where we're headed and how we're going to play into that. And then people will get excited about it on, in surveys and stuff.
Well, and kind of stretching your imagination, this is what I hope AR experience will be only everywhere. But for now, because we don't have that, there is a company called Tilt 5, and they've got kind of a neat product. I'm not going to say it's Metaverse. But it does show the potential of AR, and there's some AR now using their product. So what they have is there's a folding game board, and it's like holographic or 3D tabletop games. I'm trying to think of how to describe it. The picture up on the board is probably the best representation of it. But you have a game board, you unfold, and then they have these AR glasses, and because they're not the big clunky VR stuff that we have now and all that stuff, they're kind of basics. They're a little more comfortable, and you can basically play various tabletop games that are now like holograms, and they can be multiplayer. You can have multiplayer sitting around the same table, or it can be you're at your house and I'm at my house and we're playing together over the web. But they also have crossplay too, where somebody could just be playing on a computer and skipping the 3-dimensional holographic kind of experience, but still playing along. And there's a lot of potential for this. It looks like it'll be fun for game night and that kind of stuff. Where there's a neat little remote, has kind of like this antenna thing on the end that kind of works as like a little bit of a probe or whatever, but it also has like something similar to a Joy-Con from a Nintendo on it. So it's kind of a neat little device. Unfortunately, like a lot of systems like this, they're shipping. They did a GoFundMe first, and they're shipping to the GoFundMe people. There's not a ton of games out for it, but I think the possibilities, first thing that popped in my head is like the tabletop games I used to play when I was younger, like Dungeons and Dragons and Robotech and that kind of stuff. And I was thinking, man, that would be a whole, like if you could do that on there, that would be a whole lot more fun, because your little guys can crawl around the dungeon or the cave, and you can actually see it.
There's some of that exists now that's not holographic or AR, that are like these little boards that are electronic, and it's almost like playing on a TV,
right?
And those are pretty cool. I've followed these guys for a few years now, actually. So like I'm very familiar with them, and kind of what they're bringing to the table, so to speak. So yeah, I think it's pretty neat, and you're right. It's another example of how AR can be for, for gaming. I mean, when you think, like I said in the beginning of this podcast today, I was like, when you think about who your early adopters are for this tech, for AR,
right,
especially, my brain, like, number one is gamers. And I think that's why when you're thinking about people who are trying to, build a metaverse and be a part of it and head that direction, or own it in quotes, right? And your brain immediately goes to companies like Niantic. It's for that exact reason. Like people, they're deciding to attack that early adopter segment of gamers. And you can come at it that way. If you're thinking about like, how do I build a mega company that's going to be, rival Google someday because of what this technology is all about. And you're thinking, how do I kind of get my foot in the door? Like Snap's going after creators, right? Like content creators. Niantic's going after gamers. Facebook's just trying to get people that want social experiments, right? So there's like a few different prongs that you can go after. And maybe those will be the right entry point. Maybe they won't. Time will tell us on that one. But
they're all going with what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to think about it. They're going with what they're comfortable with. They already have user bases that are, millions strong. So yeah, maybe it makes sense. But it'll be interesting to see how it kind of plays out, because I think, the gamers are definitely top of the list. It's just how many,
right?
Because gaming is such an interesting, diverse group of people. Like you have people that like even as big as Pokemon Go is, it's still a very small segment of
gamers.
Yeah, but you could get people that like to play that. You could get people that like to play D&D. You could get people that like to play Madden. Know. And that's a very diverse group, and they don't necessarily often overlap.
Right. Some play all, and some just play some.
Yeah. I think
this one, what it has going for it, even though I think as soon as somebody like Apple or Meta or whomever drops, or InReal could be in the mix, but whoever drops the actual real AR glasses, these guys could have some life in them for a little while until that happens.
Yeah, they could.
I worry about a company like this having a limited lifespan, but their product's less than $400, and so that makes it kind of affordable. Versus Apple's gonna be maybe around 3,000, and Meta might be 1,000 for their AR stuff.
The concept of what they're doing is kind of like, you remember how I described a couple of podcasts back about having an AR experience that you could develop on a flat object or a piece of artwork or whatever. And I had done it on a business card and made a little like robot guy. And this is kind of that same idea. You have a static map, so to speak, that can be easily recognized as where you're placing your AR stuff. And then the tech is the AR stuff that they've built that's just being put on that.
Right.
And the glasses, which they don't look like they're all that intensive, from a hardware standpoint.
And the weird part is how they work is kind of interesting.
Are they putting images into your vision, or how is that working?
So they actually are projecting onto if I understand it correct, they're projecting onto the mat, and then the way the mat is shaped, depending on your orientation on the mat, it reflects back the image you see in the glasses. So it's an interesting concept of how they do it. They obviously have to, be using light frequencies that change when it reflects back, because you don't see like this flashlight looking thing pointing at the map that's on and blaring, but they describe it as it projects to the mat, and then depending on your orientation on the mat determines what gets projected back and what you see in the glasses. So I'd be willing to bet that because of that, you have to be in probably a not super bright room. Playing outside in the daylight probably doesn't work. And I actually haven't seen anybody do that, but that's kind of how they describe how it works. So in a lot of ways, they're not using AR technology, because not projecting within the glasses what you're seeing.
Well, but
they're looking at the mat itself to determine.
I don't know. I think I'd want to read into that more, because I still feel like it's got to be going into the glasses, and it's just a matter of detecting the mat and where it's at and deciding what it's gonna. I don't know. The reflecting part of that equation feels wrong to me. So I don't know. I may read up on that one just to kind of understand it a little bit more.
They had a diagram on that maybe that should have been one of the images I chose. So I'll put a link to it, but that's kind of how it described how it worked. It was kind of kind of interesting to me how that worked. Felt kind of low tech but high tech at the same time.
Yeah. Well, it's cool anyway. It's I don't know, like, does it have like a bunch of games on it, or does it have like just a couple?
Well, right now it just has a few. It's like the same problem all game systems or consoles have when they come out, is there's not a lot there. Now, what they are bragging about though is the ability to port a game to work on their system is supposedly super easy. Doesn't require a lot of.
Okay, so maybe you'll see like Steam
so maybe you'll see
games
some
and stuff
more
like that
come
end up on
pretty
there.
quick.
That'd be cool.
And it works on PC and Android devices. So apparently there's an Android app that you'll be able to get on your Android phone, and you'll be able to run it from there. So if you're wanting to play as a group together, as long as everybody has Android phones or has their PC, that's the other part that's...
Wait, is it tethered?
It is tethered.
Oh,
So,
I missed that.
Yeah, it is tethered. So that's
I see
probably
it in
one of the
the image.
downsides. Yeah, it's got a
Okay.
cord.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest downside that it has is the tethering.
Yeah.
There's no magic inside the glasses.
Yeah,
Just,
that explains the like super streamlined glasses that are there. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know.
like I said, I think it's neat technology. I think it's cool. I think it has limited lifespan because of some of that.
I mean, in its current state, sure.
Sure.
No,
No,
I mean, these are probably their first steps towards, what we initially thought
sure.
before I discovered that they're tethered.
Well, yeah, they're tethered, but I mean, if they're able to cut the cord at some point, that would help them extend their lifespan, I think. And
yeah.
if they get to where you don't have to have the board. Now, I understand what the board provides, so that might be a little bit tough for them, but
I think it just depends.
Baby steps,
Yeah, it kind of depends. It's probably just the entry point for them, and then they'll get rid of it. I mean, if they don't have to do the hardware anymore and they could just focus on the gameplay experience, they could sell the board and it would just work with, your Apple glasses or something like that.
That could be cool. So then they're just selling software.
Yeah, and a board.
And a board.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's horrible.
Well, the board may
Maybe
never.
That's just the death of their company.
Right.
I don't know.
if you're wanting to sell a tabletop game experience because you play D&D or some of the Star Wars.
I mean, lots of people play card games and tabletop stuff and whatever.
Give you a little more advanced version of that.
Yeah. Oh, well, and I like the idea of being able to play. Like, we can play together,
right?
But when you can loop in more people that aren't physically with you, which you wouldn't have thought 3 years ago would be nearly as important to think about as
the
it
pandemic
is today.
came and everybody played cards over Zoom. So
yeah, I mean, you saw a lot of that. Just the need to connect with other humans, even if you couldn't do it like physically in person.
Right.
But I think it made people appreciate that a lot more, and so like stuff like this, and playing games together, even when you can't physically be together, I think it's a great pitch point for sure. So maybe they've got a future just because of that. Who knows?
Could be. And the price point's low. I mean, as long as the offerings are out there, if the offerings are out there over $1,000, I mean, that's probably going to help them a lot.
Maybe. Yeah. We'll have to see how it plays out. We'll keep an eye on them. I've been watching them for the last few years. So that was it for today, though, wasn't it?
That's it. So,
all right. On that note, subscribe.
Follow us. Leave us some comments. Let us know how we're doing.
And we'll catch you on the next one.